If you have a gun, especially an old revolver at home, pay close attention. There's a real chance it's worth more than everything in your 401k combined. They're guns that look ordinary to most people, but at the auction, they're worth a lot. One was even sold on June 23rd this year for $12,000. Here are 11 old revolvers most seniors don't know are worth 10 times their retirement savings. Kicking off at number 11, the Colt Official Police. Most people write this one off immediately. It looks like a standard police revolver. It feels like one. It was one for decades. But that's exactly what makes it dangerous to undervalue. The Colt Official Police was chambered in .38 Special and served American law enforcement from 1927 all the way through 1969. That's over 4 decades of continuous production. But production ended in 1969, and it never came back. What most people don't know is that pre-war examples, specifically those manufactured before 1942, were built to a different standard entirely. The fitting was tighter. The polish was deeper. The internal components were hand-finished in a way Colt simply stopped doing after the war. A post-war official police in shooter condition might bring $400 at auction. But a pre-war example with original grips, matching numbers, and a clean action. That same gun is now clearing $1,200 to $1,800 at serious auction houses and climbing. The problem is that most owners can't tell the difference between a 1938 and a 1955 example without checking the serial number range. Pre-war production ran through approximately serial number 400,000. If your official police falls below that number, you are not holding a used police gun. You are holding a pre-war Colt built during the last era when American craftsmanship had no production shortcuts to take. But the gun coming in at number 10 makes the official police look like pocket change. The Smith & Wesson Model 27 is the most important revolver Smith & Wesson ever made, and almost nobody under 60 knows why. In 1935, when Remington developed the .357 Magnum cartridge, Smith & Wesson built exactly one revolver to chamber it. That revolver was the Model 27. But here's what the gun shops won't tell you. The earliest pre-war Model 27s were not production guns in any modern sense. They were hand-fitted. Every internal component was individually matched to its frame. The top strap was checkered by hand. The barrel was hand-selected for straightness. Smith & Wesson called them the Registered Magnum, and from 1935 to 1938, you could specify your own barrel length, sight configuration, and grip style directly at the factory. Fewer than 5,500 registered Magnums were produced before the war ended that program permanently. A registered Magnum with its original registration certificate and matching box sold at Rock Island Auction in 2022 for $9,200. A standard pre-war Model 27 in excellent condition regularly clears $2,500 to $4,000. But most owners inherited these guns inside wooden boxes with no documentation and assumed the box was the valuable part. The gun inside it was worth 30 times more. If you own a Model 27 with a pinned barrel and recessed chambers, you are holding a pre-1982 example, and that detail alone separates a shooter from a collector piece. The pinned barrel was eliminated by Smith & Wesson in 1982 as a production cost reduction. Every gun built after that date is worth measurably less to serious buyers. But number 9 is the revolver that made the whole internet argue, and most people still own the wrong version. The Colt Python. Everyone knows the name. Almost nobody owns the right one. Since Colt reintroduced the Python in 2020, the market has split cleanly in two. The reissue is a fine revolver, but it is not what collectors are buying. What collectors are buying are pre-1999 Pythons, specifically those made before Colt's quality declined in the mid-1980s. And more specifically still, those made in the 1960s and 1970s, when the Python's action was being hand-fitted by craftsmen who spent entire careers on a single model. Here's what most people don't know about Python production. The Python was never made on a pure assembly line. Each one went through a hand-fitting stage that Colt called the Python Room, a dedicated finishing department where actions were individually tuned before the gun left the factory. That process was quietly discontinued as production pressures increased through the 1980s. A Python made in 1968 in Royal Blue finish with original grips and box is now tracking above $6,500 at auction. A Python made in 1991 in comparable condition brings roughly half that. The difference isn't visible to the naked eye. It's in the action, the trigger pull, and the serial number range. Pre-1969 Pythons carry a serial number with no letter prefix or the letter V. And those are the examples serious buyers are chasing. But if you think the Python market is aggressive, wait until you see what's happening with number 8. Most people know the Smith & Wesson Model 29 because of Clint Eastwood. Dirty Harry pointed one at a man on a San Francisco street in 1971 and told him to ask himself one question. What that movie didn't tell you is that the gun Eastwood was holding wasn't technically called the Model 29 when it was first built. The earliest large-frame N-Series 44 Magnums, produced from 1956 to approximately 1958, carried no model number at all. They are called pre-Model 29s or 4-screw Model 29s, referring to the 4 side plate screws on the frame rather than the 3 screws used on later production. That 4th screw location was plugged and eliminated in 1958 as a cost-saving measure. But here's what changes everything. A standard Model 29 in excellent condition brings $800 to $1,200 at auction. A 4-screw pre-Model 29 in the same condition brings $3,500 to $6,000. Most owners cannot identify which version they have without counting the screw holes on the side plate. If you own a large frame Smith & Wesson 44 Magnum and you have never counted those screws, stop this video right now and go count them. This is not a minor detail. It is the fastest way to add thousands of dollars to your understanding of what you actually own. But number 7 is where the values stop being surprising and start being genuinely shocking. The Colt Single Action Army has been in continuous circulation since 1873. 3 generations of production, sold in every pawn shop and gun shows in America for the last century. Most people assume that means it's common. Most people are wrong. Here is what separates an $800 gun show SAA from a $25,000 auction result. Generation matters, configuration matters, documentation matters. First generation Colt SAA models, produced from 1873 through 1940, were made during the era when Colt's workforce and metallurgy were operating at peak capacity. But within first generation production, the cavalry configuration is its own category entirely, and we will come back to that at number 1. For now, understand this. A first generation SAA in 45. Colt, with matching numbers and original finish above 60%, is now clearing $18,000 to $28,000 at Rock Island auction. Second generation S. AA models produced from 1956 to 1975 bring significantly less, typically $1,500 to $3,500, depending on condition and caliber. But here's what most owners don't know. The caliber your ESAA is chambered in changes its value dramatically. 45 Colt is the most desirable. 4440 is second. Anything else and the collector premium drops sharply. If you own a single action army and you don't know which generation it is, The answer is in the serial number. First generation runs from serial 1 through approximately 357,859. Everything above that is second or third generation. And the difference in auction result can be $20,000. If you are still watching, you are already ahead of most people who clicked on this video. The next 6 entries are where the real hidden value lives, and number 1 is something auction houses have been quietly tracking for 30 years. Here's something almost no one outside serious collecting circles knows about military contract revolvers. The Smith & Wesson hand ejector, specifically the .38 hand ejector military and police, was issued to Allied forces in both World War I and World War II. But the civilian version and the military contract version look nearly identical on the outside. The difference is on the inside of the frame, on the barrel, and on the grips, and that difference is worth thousands of dollars. Military contract hand ejectors carry British proof marks, Canadian inspection stamps, or U.S. military acceptance cartouches depending on their contract origin. A British-proofed .38 200 hand ejector chambered in .38 S and W rather than .38, special with matching numbers and visible inspection stamps, is currently bringing $1,800 to $3,200 at auction. The same gun without provenance documentation brings $400. But here's what changes the calculation entirely. Lend-Lease contract revolvers shipped to Britain and Russia between 1941 and 1945 were documented in U.S. government shipping records that are now publicly accessible. If your hand ejector's serial number appears in those records, you have a documented Lend-Lease firearm, and that paper trail puts it in a collector category that did not exist 15 years ago. The Colt Detective Special doesn't look like a valuable gun. It's small. It's snub-nosed. It spent most of its life in plainclothes holsters and glove compartments. But the Detective Special has a production history most owners have never examined. And that history is where the value hides. Colt produced the Detective Special from 1927 through 1986 across 4 distinct issues. The first issue, produced from 1927 to 1946, has a shorter ejector rod housing than later models and a different grip frame profile. The second issue, produced from 1947 to 1972, introduced minor internal changes, but retained the original barrel configuration. Here's what that means in practice. A 4th issue Detective Special in shooter condition brings $350 at auction. A first issue example in original condition with correct grips brings $1,200 to $2,200. But a first issue with original box and documented pre-war manufacture, specifically before Pearl Harbor, is now entering territory where $3,000 is not an unusual result. Most owners of first issue examples don't know they own a first issue. The ejector rod housing is the tell. If it doesn't extend to the end of the barrel, you are holding a first or second issue, and you need to find out which one before you price it at a gun show. The Smith & Wesson Model 19 was not a catalog gun. It was a request. In the early 1950s, Border Patrol officer and combat shooting legend Bill Jordan approached Smith & Wesson with a specific problem. He wanted a .357 Magnum revolver on a medium K-frame, lighter and faster to draw than the heavy N-frame Model 27, but with full Magnum capability. Smith & Wesson built it for him. They called it the Combat Magnum, but here's what most Model 19 owners don't know. The earliest examples produced before Smith & Wesson introduced the dash suffix system in 1967 are called no-dash Model 19s. These pre-dash examples were produced to a tighter specification than anything that followed, and they carry no suffix after the model number stamped in the yoke cut. A standard Model 19-3 or 19-4 in excellent condition brings $500 to $700 at auction. No Dash Model 19 in comparable condition brings $1,400 to $2,200. The difference is invisible unless you know exactly where to look, and most owners have never looked. If you own a Model 19 and you don't know its dash designation, check the stamp inside the yoke cut on the frame. No number after the model designation means you own a pre-1967 example, and that single detail just changed what your gun is worth. Most American collectors have never held a Webley. That's exactly why Webley values are moving the way they are right now. The Webley Mark VI was the standard British military sidearm from 1915 through the Second World War. It is a top-break revolver chambered in .455 Webley, a cartridge that has not been in standard production for decades. But here's where most owners make a catastrophic mistake. After World War II, large numbers of Webley Mark VI revolvers were imported into the United States and converted to .45 ACP using a half-moon clip system. Those converted revolvers are worth $200 to $400. The conversion destroyed their collector value permanently. An original unconverted Webley Mark VI in .455 Webley with matching numbers and visible British military proof marks is worth $900 to $1,800. But a Webley Mark VI with documented regimental markings, unit stamps applied by specific British Army regiments, enters a military category where $3,500 is not unusual. The tell is the caliber. If your Webley has been converted to .45 ACP, it is a shooter. If it still chambers .455 Webley, it is a collector piece, and you should treat it accordingly. This one stops most people cold when they hear the number. The Smith & Wesson Model 1 first issue is the oldest commercially successful American revolver ever made. Smith & Wesson introduced it in 1857. It was the first American revolver to use a self-contained metallic cartridge, the .22 short. The Model 1 went through 3 distinct issues before production ended in 1882. The first issue is identifiable by its flat side plates, its square back trigger guard, and its serial number below approximately 11,000. Fewer than 11,000 first issue Model 1s were ever produced. A second or third issue Model 1 in average condition brings $300 to $600. A first issue example in original condition with intact finish brings $2,500 to $5,500. But a first issue Model 1 with documented provenance, a period letter, a family history, or a retailer's mark is now clearing $8,000 at specialist auctions. These guns appear in estate sales regularly. They are priced as curiosities. They are sold with no paperwork required because they predate federal firearms regulations entirely. If you find one, the serial number is the first thing you check, and anything below 11,000 means you are holding American firearms history in your hands. Everything on this list has been building to this. The Colt single-action Army Cavalry model, U.S. marked 7.5-inch barrel, .45 Colt, is the single most documented, most authenticated, most consistently valuable American revolver in auction history. Here is what makes it categorically different from every other SAA on the market. The U.S. government contracted Colt for single-action Army revolvers from 1873 through 1891. Those revolvers were inspected, stamped, and documented at the factory by U.S. Army Ordnance inspectors. The inspector's cartouche, a stamped initial inside an oval on the left grip panel, is the authentication mark that separates a $1,200 commercial SAA from a $40,000 government-issue cavalry model. But here's what makes this unlike anything else in American collecting. Every U.S.-issued cavalry model, SAA, is traceable. The government maintained records of serial numbers, inspection dates, and issuing arsenals now used by auction houses to authenticate individual revolvers. A Cavalry Model SAA with a matching cartouche, a verified serial number in the government issue range, and original finish above 20% sold at Rock Island Auction in 2023 for $43,000. The same gun without the cartouche, even with matching numbers and original finish, brings $8,000 to $12,000. That single stamped initial on the grip panel is worth $30,000. Most people who own Cavalry Model SAAs inherited them, and most have never looked at the grip panel under a loupe. If you own a long-barreled, U.S.-marked single-action Army and you have never had it professionally examined, that is the most expensive oversight you are currently making.